the whole premise to conflict resolution is to say your feeling first before you say what the other person did. And if you do that, you do your part, it's amazing how that will come through.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Something New show. And I am Mindy, your host. I'm so glad to be here with you guys and learning how to live a life worth celebrating. So today we are welcoming back for the second time on our show, Dr. Wendy Shirk here from Tulsa, Oklahoma, to be with us and tell us a little bit more about her life coaching when it comes to couples. But before we do, I just want to quickly introduce her to you one more time, that she is a business consultant, a coach in life, executive coaching, couples coaching. She specializes in medical, dental, veterinary practice management, as well as business formation and business maximization. She's a board certified coach, and it's different than a therapist. And we talked about that last time, how interesting that is. And she likes to help her clients maximize their purpose and produce results. So welcome back, Wendy.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Mindy.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about today a dicey topic, which is couples coaching. And one of the things I think is really unique is this is different than therapy in the way that you've best explained it, saying therapy looks backwards and kind of works through the past and a lot of sometimes hurt and trauma, pain that has to be definitely healed. And so there's a place for therapy there.
Definitely.
But as Jordan and I have, kind of grown in our marriage, we've been married almost 20 years, which is crazy. But we have really benefited from the coaching model. While we have done therapy too, this has been different for us and transformative, different in a different way, because it's more focused on what is currently happening right now in our marriage and what are the things we can do to change to go forward. So it's much more forward facing. And for me, I don't know what other people's Enneagram is, but I don't really enjoy going all through the past and hashing out all the different things. That's not necessarily something that brings joy to me. And a lot of times I leave sessions saying, wow, I don't even feel like we improved at all. So I really love the couples coaching model, just because to me, I feel like I leave with a plan and what we're going to do action steps wise going forward so that actually we can solve the problem that we came here with and we don't just sit on a couch and cry for an hour. Not that that's bad. It's just for me, it's really hard to just wrap that up and say, okay, well, what was the point of that? But again, I'm probably a unique Enneagram number when it comes to how I like to handle that. I really can easily forgive. I just like to see, okay, but what's the plan now? Are you going to change? Am I going to change? Do I need to change? Do you need to change? Who's needing to be supported here? So that honestly, I just want us to be winning. Like, I just want us to both be winning. Like, we are not winning right now. And so I think that most couples have problems. Like, I don't know one couple that doesn't have a problem. So when they would come to you or someone that's a board certified coach that could say, hey, let's talk through some of the things you're dealing with, and then let's go forward from here and make some changes. To me, that feels so much more proactive, so much better leaving a session with hope. Like, yes. I actually can feel, taste, see the hope after a session with you. I feel so much better. So I'd love to talk about, let's take people through a couple session today, which is, like I said, it could be a little dicey. Now, we don't have to go through like my personal life and all of my personal problems, but
everything's confidential.
Let's talk through, like, hypothetically, if a couple came and sat in your office with you or did Zoom, because we do Zoom.
Yeah, most of my couples coaching clients meet with me via Zoom, because you're taking two busy people as well as me and trying to find a time for a session.
Right. And they're all over the country. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
A lot of your clients are not just local.
They're everywhere.
So let's take people through a session today of what a couples coaching session might look like. Should they be thinking about getting help for their marriage? And maybe they were like me, where they didn't feel like therapy was really the answer.
Right.
It was not our answer. Now, it doesn't mean it's not the answer for everyone, but for us, it did not help like life coaching did. So, I cannot recommend it enough. We have so much more joy in our marriage. We actually enjoy each other. We really celebrate a lot about each other where we
Yes.
did not do that before. And we give each other space to be who we really are. So those are some of the outcomes, but I'd like to walk through. Let's just pretend we're a new couple. We come into a session with you. We're saying, hey, Dr. Wendy, help us. We have issues.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we sit down on the couch. Where do you begin?
Well, the first thing is I want to just make sure to give a disclaimer,
Okay.
and that is that when there are hurts that have not been dug out by the root, there is a place for counseling. And so
Yeah.
I can't do counseling as part of my board certification, and I choose not to as well because I'm not licensed to do that. So when there are things that have to be dug out by the root, that needs to be with a licensed therapist.
Right.
Okay, so I
Right.
just want to make sure to make that clarification, because I won't meet with a couple if they have not worked on some of the root issues that did go back to their past. Because every marriage contains two individuals that bring your separate issues from your family of origin to a new family that you are creating.
Right.
The couple and the family you are creating is bringing all the baggage of your past, yes, but also your family of origin. So you basically react to marriage and to children in the way your parents reacted, unless you mitigate that and change it and make it your own and make it your unique flavor in your marriage. So that's where we have to say, okay, do we need therapy, number one? And if we do, to work out, maybe there's been an affair, maybe there's been hurt, maybe somebody
An addiction.
gambled. I have one client whose husband gambled their life savings away. So
There's forgiveness and
there's
definitely
forgiveness through therapy a lot of times first.
Well, and anything with trauma, right?
Right.
hello.
Trauma has to be dealt with by the root, and
Yeah.
so it does require therapy. So I just want to make sure to say that.
Absolutely.
But so I work with people where the roots of a lot of those trauma pieces have been already dug out. And so now we have the facts of, okay, this is what happened in the marriage. Now, where do we go from here? So we don't want to keep digging up the past, but we need a facilitator or a mediator to kind of help us with these issues, because I still bring the baggage from my family. You still bring the baggage from yours. So that's where we have to work that out together. So in couples coaching, it takes an hour and a half to 2 hours instead of the hour session that I normally do with executive coaching and life coaching. So
Well, there's two people talking, so you need
two-
twice as long.
Exactly. And anytime I've tried to make it faster, it's like we're just getting to the heart of the issue at the 1 hour mark, because we have to unload what each person feels and thinks. So we still go through feelings, through the feeling wheel. We still identify those things. Where are we today? How do we feel about life? How do we feel about each other? And then we really have to go into, how do we make our marriage better? Okay, so like you said, we're dealing with the present and the future. What do we want? What's our envisioned future as a family, as a marriage, as a couple? A lot of my clients could be engaged, or they're maybe not even engaged yet. They're dating seriously, and they want to have couples coaching. So it's not just for married people.
Yep, any serious relationship.
Any serious relationship. And sometimes it's even for work relationships, because sometimes, in a work relationship, you'll have two people that are almost like work couple. And so sometimes the same techniques can be used with two closely associated people at work, like two VPs or two people who work very closely with each other. But anyway, in the context of marriage, it's so much fun, because the first thing we do, before personality assessments and balance wheels and drivers and drainers and a lot of the same things I do with individuals, we're really wanting to get in touch with, why did I fall in love with this person to begin with? What was the original, why did I dig my husband? And my husband and I, Steve, who I love and adore, have been married 36 years. And I can honestly say that this time in our life, we are happier than we were in the beginning. So it gets better if you do the work, and if you really how can we bring our very best person forward every single day in this marriage? So very, very important to first think about, why do I dig this person? Why did I pick this person to begin with? My picker's maybe my picker was broken and I kind of picked the wrong person, but I feel in my heart and through my faith or whatever that I'm supposed to stay with this person. And when you're committed, a committed relationship can handle coaching versus therapy. If you know you're going to stay together, you're in it to stay together, then there's total hope for you going forward. If you don't know if you're to remain together, that's where therapy would be much better, because you have to decide, is this person my soulmate forever, you know? But I want to just say
that's a really big point. I just want to make sure people got, you're saying if you're not sure if you're supposed to stay together, and separation is a possibility.
Yeah.
Therapy is more where your lane. But if you're saying, hey, this is for sure, we're going to stay together, we just need to figure out how to do it better, then you're saying coaching.
Yes, okay. Exactly. Thanks for repeating that. Yes, very, very important, because if I'm in a committed relationship and I know this is my forever person, then I need to bring my best and he needs to bring his best. Oftentimes, the reason a coach is so effective is that there's one person in the relationship, oftentimes the woman, but not always, who gets overlooked, who retreats into a shell instead of coming forward with good boundaries. So one person is more of the aggressor, or the person who does more of the talking and decision making, and the other person feels left out or unheard. Mm-hmm. So that's why coaching is so important, because oftentimes, I mean, every session, if I'm honest, I'll say, so-and-so, I haven't really heard from you. And I'll even tell the other one, the guy, usually, not always,
Not always,
but I'll say, hey, I need you to not talk for a minute. And I'll say it really funny.
I think you've told me that before.
I'm not going to say.
Okay.
But I sometimes I'll say, I don't want you to talk for a moment. I want to know what he thinks. I want to know what she thinks. And oftentimes when they feel heard for the first time in their marriage, they'll just cry through their talk because they're not used to being heard. And that's such an aha moment, an eureka moment for a lot of couples, when the one who is the dominant person. And a lot of times it's just because the personality is more forward-facing, it's extroverted, whereas the other personality might be more introverted or severely introverted. And when that happens, and you're based on your family of origin, sometimes you just don't know how to bring up your
hard
feelings.
Topic. Yeah.
Right. And I teach the method, my conflict prevention resolution method that I take to businesses and to groups and to couples all the time.
Can you briefly hash it out?
Yeah, I mean, it's the basic method. Of course, it's a 20-page manual, and of exercises and resources that I take couples through and groups and everything else. But the basic premise is that you state your feeling before you state what they did wrong. So I can't say, Mindy, you made me feel. No, I own my feelings, because you're just a catalyst. It is the initial feeling that comes to me is really not my choice. It's because I'm human. But what I do with that feeling is my choice. So we own 51% or more of our corporation. If we think of ourselves as a corporation, even the most abused person, I was raped when I was 10. I went through a very traumatic event when I was little. But even a person who has experienced trauma or abuse still owns 51% of
their own
corporation.
Their feelings,
their
feelings,
everything.
yes.
Right.
So you start with saying,
I feel blank when you blank. Mm-hmm. So before I say what you did that triggered me or that made me upset or whatever, I say the feeling word. And a lot of times I have to get the feeling wheel out to determine my feeling, because the initial feeling you have often is anger, or it's sadness, or it's hurt.
Do you have the feeling wheel on your website?
I don't have it on the website, but it is so readily available. And you can even buy a pillow cover on Amazon, and you can buy stickers on Amazon. I have one in the front of my Bible. I have a pillow in my office. I throw it to my clients.
So we need to have the feeling wheel a little bit more accessible, so that we can use those terms. Okay.
Yes, because even though I teach this and I have for over 20 years, I still have to go back to the feeling wheel to figure out, what in the heck am I thinking? What am I feeling?
Right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right now. And I need to get as specific as possible, because on the feeling wheel, you've got the basic emotions in the middle, like sad, anger, happy. Then you've got two more.
I'm going to put a feeling wheel in the studio.
Good.
I want to put one right in here, and I'm going to check on Drew, my producer. When he comes in every time.
You're going to make him give his feelings?
Drew, how are you feeling today, Drew? I'm going to ask him.
He'll love that. I'm sure. Men love that.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what I find, though, is if I can pinpoint my feeling, and it's a feeling that doesn't have a negative connotation based on you and your background and your hot button issues and triggers, then I am completely explaining how I feel. Like if I said, I felt jealous when you didn't invite me to go to that party with you. That right there, jealousy is an okay feeling to identify. But so many people instead, they'll say, I felt angry or I felt hurt or whatever. But instead, say what the real emotion was, because when you give a real emotion to somebody, they usually can take it and they can see how you really feel instead of just looking triggered or acting out like in anger, when really anger is not what you feel. It's the initial emotion that comes in. But then if you really identify the feeling, it was, I felt unheard. I felt misunderstood. I felt, there's so many different feelings you can use to pinpoint how you truly feel. So the whole premise to conflict resolution is to say your feeling first before you say what the other person did. And if you do that, you do your part, it's amazing how that will come through. So, there are other big tips, like you want to always plan a time that the other person, where it's not a power play by saying, Mindy, I want to talk to you behind the barn at 5 tonight. I mean, you're not giving them all day to perseverate over what I'm going to say to you, because that becomes a power play, and that's a passive aggression. And so that right there is going to piss them off. So instead, if you approach them at the time that is a good time to talk, the kids are in bed, we're having a glass of wine, we're watching our favorite show or whatever. You pause it and you say, I just really want to talk because I care about us. I care about us so much. And that's the reason I want to talk. That's the reason I want to share this with you. I have to be honest about my feelings. And I just want you to know that I really felt hurt today when you said what you said. It just hurt me. In the future, I'd very much appreciate it if you didn't bring up that topic or whatever it might be. So you give the I feel blank when you blank, and then you say what you need. You create a boundary, an expectation going forward so that they know how it is to fix it. Because in our marriages, we want to please each other. I want to be there for Steve. I want to be a great wife to him. I want to be a helpmate to him. But if I don't know how he feels, then...
Or what behavior I did to make them feel that way.
Right.
I think that's really key what you said at the end there. You said, so it's got to then create a change in behavior for how that same circumstance will play out next time.
Next time,
because
right.
we know there's a whole bunch of next times. And I used to live in the land of don't just apologize to me, but tell me you're not going to do that again. But that's like so dumb, because I'm like, don't just tell me you're not going to do it again. Actually, what I really want to hear, now that I'm thinking about it, is I want to hear what you will do differently next time. Not just like, I'm sorry I hurt you, I won't do that again. That used to be like what I was hoping for.
A trigger. Or
I was just
you
thinking,
had a romantic version of what you wanted in response to what you said.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, just an I'm sorry wasn't good enough. I wanted to hear, I'm sorry, I won't do that again. But actually, I really don't want to hear, I won't do that again, because that's stupid. I mean, it's so empty.
Right.
What I really want to hear is, I'm sorry. I realized by doing this, that is what hurt you because you communicated it. And this is how I'm going to change my behavior.
Exactly.
For the future.
And the confrontor, the person who's bringing the confronting, can also give the expectation themselves. Like, in the future, I'd really appreciate if you would wait until I've put the dinner on the table before you start asking me those questions, or whatever it might be. Just, everybody's different, and my style is different than yours. And, my husband and I do things very differently. He, on the disc, he's a DS and I'm an ID. So we are woo. And, on the Enneagram, we're totally different as well. So that's where we come to life very differently. And so sometimes he'll come and bombard me with questions when I haven't decompressed yet. And so I have to give that expectation. But if I haven't given the expectation or the boundary, then it's not his fault that he's messed up, because he hasn't messed up. He's just doing him. Mm-hmm. And so
that'll happen even with us, where
all the time.
Jordan at 10 p.m. at night, we finally get our kids to bed and he has all these questions for me, and I'm done. I'm for the day. Like, I'm maybe about to go work on my laptop. However, I'm done with people.
Right.
And then I'm like, right now, are you serious? You're going to ask me 10 million questions? Right. And then I get so upset with him. But then we don't talk about why that was upsetting.
Right.
That was not.
And what do you want in the future? See, that's where you have to be honest about what you need for the future, because our loved ones want to meet our needs if they just know what they are. And I don't know what it's like to be you. You don't know what it's like to be me. As a good wife, I hope, I study him. He's my biggest subject. And so I study him, and I want to speak his love languages, and which is service. And he's a total acts of service guy. So he shows me love by working around the house, getting things done, doing laundry. I mean, the guy works so hard. And he's saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I'm like, I'm
Really?
a quality time person. I just want you to sit with me for 15 minutes and look in my eye and have this very deep conversation. But instead, he's like working for me. He's doing things for me. And so we've had to learn to say what we really need. And that's boundary communication.
Okay, let's go back.
Extremely important.
Let's go back to your couch. We're back in your office.
Yeah.
So you did the feelings. How are you guys feeling? We talked through that. And then you talked through some of the obstacles, I assume. Why are we here?
I do a check-in real quickly. I always ask them about sexy time. Are you having sexy time, and how often are you having it? I know that's uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about. It's not like we talk about sex or, go into detail. But I need to know, is that happening? Because that's the glue that holds marriages together. And when it's not happening, there's often unmet needs, especially males who are more physical by nature. Not all males, but
I've
many.
even talked to couples sometimes. I mean, like you said, maybe not the primary, but I know I am close friends with people where the female
has more need that way.
And she's frustrated.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's very, very important that both have fulfillment and everything else. And we won't talk what those words are. You just know what they are. Very important that that's reciprocated. And so those are things that are extremely important. So I check in on those things, and they always laugh. We always have a little chuckle, but it's a way to know how is that happening? Because oftentimes when there is a good, healthy sexual relationship, there's more openness in all of the communication, because there's that feeling of Intimacy, yeah. And intimacy is not just physical, but there's so much that happens with that is emotional as well. And so it's a barometer a lot of times with how a relationship is doing. So I check in on sexy time. We don't spend much time on it. It's just a quick question. But we also talk about, are you living through your values? Like we talked about in the other show, very important that as a couple, are you working through your values? Are you making your decisions based on values? But more importantly, I think, that's probably the most important thing, but understanding what is truly important to each person and the needs that each person has, and having the time and space in a coaching session to have the bandwidth to actually stop and say what I want from my partner. What am I needing from my husband or my wife? What is it that is missing, or where, and also what went really well in the last week. So with my clients, often we'll go over what went well. Let's go over wins and losses, as far as feelings are concerned, or perception, because again, perception is reality in the person perceiving. So I will have a certain perception of how things are, and my husband will. We may not be the same. Oftentimes
like
men...
what you thought was good that week, they might have been like, I didn't think that was good.
Right. And sometimes my husband will say, well, you didn't ever get upset. You never told me you were upset, so I didn't know you were upset. And so a lot of times there's one who retreats back, and there's one who moves forward with their feelings and thoughts. And so a lot of times the person who is the retreater, based on the way they were trained in their own family of origin, they're going to be the ones that have those unmet needs often, because they're not the ones talking about what they need or their feelings.
Let's give the person listening that's the more aggressive person in the relationship, let's give them a tip. What would you tell them if they are more dominant?
Oh, that's a good question.
What's a tip for them? And then I want you to tell the person that's maybe the more, retreating personality. They don't want to cause conflict. They hate bringing up the hard thing. What would you tell them if they're unhappy?
Yeah, and let's talk about this in the context of behind closed doors in their home, not in a coaching session, okay?
Yeah, okay.
So in that case, I would say if you're the more dominant person, because your personality is such, that's the way God made you, to be out there, to be an influencer, to be direct and dominant, or whatever it might be, those people need to talk less and listen more. But they also need to prompt the people around them. And I say that because it could be your children, it could be your friends. This doesn't just apply to the marriage relationship. This could be in any relationships in your whole life. And this is the kind of topic we talk about it every day in coaching sessions. So it's that person that needs to say, you know, I've been talking too much recently, and I just want to apologize for that. I haven't listened enough. Could you share with me your thoughts on whatever it might be, you know, where we're going to church, or how are you feeling about your needs lately? Am I meeting the needs that are expected of me? Could I do a better job? And then
Zip it.
I mean, almost like sometimes I have to bite my tongue because my husband is that person who everything's fine, and you know, it's not always important for him to bring things up. So I have to ask him, and sometimes I've been talking too much, and he hasn't had a chance to bring his thoughts out enough. Mm-hmm. And so I'll start with a quick apology sometimes and just say, you know, I've been dominating a little too much. I've been talking too much, especially when we're with so-and-so or with our family or whatever. I really want to hear from you. What is it that you think about this issue? And then
I
shut up.
can only imagine the receiving end of that being so special.
Validating.
Like, wow, they have some self-awareness.
You think?
Yeah, and that's just so great. Instead of resenting you for talking too much, now they're going to have empathy.
Right.
That you've been talking too much. They're going to be like, oh, I feel bad because she's just being herself.
Right.
And she was self-aware that maybe she needs to pull back a little.
Right.
You know, because I don't think those of us that are outgoing need to necessarily change who we are. No. But having that awareness to sometimes realize, oh, maybe it's been out of balance.
Right.
So checking back in. Okay, now let's talk to the person that is now like the Steve, you know, like your husband that's like, just like, I'm not going to ruffle any feathers. I'm going to be fine. It's not worth it.
Those people need to think about when they feel resentment. Because if you ever feel resentment, it means you could be a little codependent. It could mean that you're saying yes to things that really you don't want to say yes to please other people. So they could be into the people-pleasing trap, which is a form of codependency. And that's when they first have to be aware that their opinions and feelings matter and that it's okay to share them. You know, because a lot of times they just feel like it's not worth it, you know? And so I think it gets to the point where they need to speak up, because if they don't, what'll happen is if they store that resentment over and over and over and they get trampled upon, they will feel taken advantage of. And then what happens?
Well, you want out.
Yeah. And or they either retreat further or they lash out, because eventually they're going to get angry. You know, eventually they could get very resentful and blow their top. So passive people do that when they've been pushed too far. So that's why more passive people are introverts. I don't want to say that all passive people are introverts, but often it goes together. If you're more introverted and you don't talk as much, you're not accustomed to talking as much or coming up with your own thoughts and feelings on the fly and asking people to listen to you and here, I want to share. You know, if you're not that kind of person, then I think you need to say to yourself, is this imposter syndrome? Am I belittling myself and not having boundaries and speaking my mind enough? Because my opinion matters too.
Actually, I was just going to say, sometimes the quiet people that are not speaking up, sometimes they have the best things to share.
Totally.
And we miss out on so much depth when we don't invite them into the conversation a little more intentionally.
Yes, and it's people like you and me that need to invite them more intentionally, because we talk for a living. And so that's where a lot of times when Steve does choose to share, you know, in a group or whatever, everyone looks at him because he's got something important to say, or he wouldn't be saying it.
Yep.
So that's why we need to draw those people out, because they're the smartest ones in the room usually, you know, and the ones of us who talk a lot are just living in our feelings, and we're living in the moment, and that's good, but it's also, they're just as good as we are. They're just as important as we are, and we need to draw them out. So, yeah.
So let's go towards the end of the coaching session here. And you usually wrap up with some sort of recommendation now. It's not just like, oh, okay, this was good. We got our feelings out. We got our, our thoughts out about different things this week. But then you leave with some steps, some action items based on what you learned.
Completely.
And so there's some homework a little bit.
Right.
Talk about that.
Every session of mine, whatever I'm doing, speech coaching, marriage coaching, life coaching, executive coaching, business consulting has action items at the end and assignments for who is responsible for what action items and the dates that they should be done. So a SMART goal needs to be made, SMART, for everything we do, and that's specific, measurable, A is attainable, R is relevant, meaning it matters, and the last one is time-bound. So who's responsible, when is it going to be done, all of those things, and those expectations get in writing between me and the clients. So in this case, the couple will decide, okay, we've got to try to do something different with this son of ours or this daughter of ours. We need to meet her needs at a greater level. We need to go deeper with her and really understand why she's acting out or whatever it might be. So what are we going to do this week for that? We're going to talk to the teacher. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to sit down with her and let her talk about her feelings and thoughts. And then we're going to together make a plan of how we can be better parents to her. So whatever it might be, we take what was discussed in that session, 1.5 to 2 hours, and we make an action roadmap for between now and the next session. And there are a lot of homework pieces. So some of my homework and my resources have to do with self-exploration and sharing that with our spouse or your spouse or your team or whomever. But a lot of it is also very specific to their family and their dynamics within their relationship. What are we going to do to move that needle forward? Are we going to increase our intimacy? Or are we going to have intimacy without sexual relations as well, like just sitting on the couch and cuddling, watching British television together, having a glass of champagne to celebrate something big, whatever it might be. What are we going to do for these life events to make them special and to really move the needle forward in our relationship? So there's always action items.
Well, and something that Jordan and I did is we did a couple session to start, but then we went individually. And I felt like that was better because you could do more active listening without my interruption. And then vice versa. I got to speak without having to even, sometimes I have to really be careful about what I'm going to say because I don't want to hurt anyone. And so when I got to go individually, I didn't have to have the filter. I just got to share from my true vulnerable self. And so I loved the kind of individual paths that we made, and then we would come back once in a while and do a shared one. But you were working with both of us, and I think that was really helpful because we had the same goal.
Right.
We just
to make your marriage the most maximized it could and the best it could. Your finances, your faith, your parenting, your in stewardship in all areas of your life, your businesses, everything else. You want to maximize all those things. And so that's exactly true. I oftentimes meet individually with people after starting as a couple. It just depends on their needs. The thing about a coach is the sessions belong to the clients. So whatever they want is what I do. Like I've had some clients say, I don't want homework. And so they don't want to do any homework pieces. But then we still make action items. If they don't want any action items, they're not going to fit with me. That's not my brand. My brand is forward facing. I mean, it's very action oriented. It's get you to your goals as quickly as possible, not fart around in between and take your time. There are times we want to take our time, but I'm one of those action oriented people. So
let's get results.
Yeah, my personal brand wouldn't fit the kind of person that just wants to rehash and rehash and rehash. That wouldn't fit. I wouldn't be a good coach for people like that. My clients are people who are maximizers already. They're people who want to just suck the marrow out of life and move forward.
I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, I know we can find you at shirkconsulting.com.
Yes.
And Shirk Consulting on Instagram and Facebook as well. But Wendy, tell us the favorite drink that you want to try today.
I would love some tea. Iced tea is my favorite. And this is wonderful.
Okay. Let's have a drink of it.
Yes.
I do love some caffeine and a cold iced tea. Yes. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, I'm so glad you came today. And this was a blast talking about marriage and maximizing your relationship with your partner. And I think that all of us can really benefit from a little bit more intentionality in those relationships. So Thank you guys for joining the Something New show, where we want to talk about how to live a life worth celebrating. And we can't wait to see you next time. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow the Something New show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.